were so upset about the disciples picking and eating grain. So there were rules about it. Okay, there were rules about the Sabbath was so special to the Jewish people that there was rules they could not do any work. And work included, it's okay. It's okay. You should hear my mic. So work includes, like, getting your food is work. Like, that was considered work. So they were very black and white about the rules and missed the whole point that rules were meant to enhance man's life, not to prevent him from getting what he or she needs. Okay? So God's rules are meant to help us, not to harm us. So sometimes this happens. Understand, Jesus wants our loved ones present, okay? No matter what. So, what about this fairness mindset? Sometimes people think, well, it's not fair. I wasn't allowed to do that, and now they're allowed. What are your thoughts on that?
Just a little something. When Tommy was really young, because there was that's the degree at the time, and they had prayer every day. And it first were really upset because they would get scolded so harshly if they made any noise during prayer or whatever. And so one day the social worker walked by and kind of was making his noises in prayer, and she said she was afraid she could somebody could. And she said, you know what? That's the way Tommy prays. And from then on, everyone was like so supportive. They just needed that little bit of knowledge coming from someone in authority who was saying, hey, we know we're supposed to be quiet, but he can't. This is the way he prays, so let him pray the way he's going to pray.
Right. And that's the onus is kind of on the adults, the people in authority in the room to kind of explain why things don't seem fair when you're a kid, because you think, well, I don't get to do that, but someone else does. To explain that everyone's body is a little different. If you don't have words, you might make sounds because that's your words. You know, just be explanatory about it so that people understand. Something similar happened. Small parish, and I'm presbytera, and sometimes my parents weren't around to help with Michael, and I had to teach Sunday school, and so I gave Michael his iPad while I'm teaching a lesson because it kept him quiet and the kids could hear me, right? Well, one little boy's like, I don't get to use my iPad lesson, right? So, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry guys, but I wouldn't be able to give you a lesson at all if I didn't do this, right? So just that fairness, it needs to be explained. It's not black and white. Fair is making a tool accessible so that someone has a level playing field, right? So it might look a little different on the outside, but you've got to be able to discern what each needs so that there can be participation. Any other thoughts before we go on this? Okay. So I just want you to know, I'd like this to be interactive, and I'm glad that you guys are chipping in, and if any time you have questions or comments, just flag me by raising your hand so that I know to stop and let you pitch in, okay? Okay, so let's talk about these scenarios. How would a loving church community communicate acceptance in these three different scenarios? What kind of accommodations might we make? So, keeping in mind Jesus in the grain fields. Someone, a young man who is blind and has a service dog, is searching into the Orthodox faith, comes to the church with the dog. Now, typically we might say, oh my gosh, no animals in the church, this is...
But what's the difference here? How do we react in a way that's accommodating?
We actually have a family who does bring a service dog, and many don't even know that the dog is even here. Like, I had no idea for a very long time when they were here and when the dog was here. And if you don't bring attention to it, some will not even know that it's aware, but if you bring attention to it, it's explanation. Everything's about explanation of this is what she needs. This dog helps her in her protecting her particular needs. You just have to understand that this is a part of it. This is a part of the family.
And usually, I mean, service dogs are so well trained. They're so well trained. They, like you said, you wouldn't even know they're around, and it's very manageable. It's not like just having an animal running around randomly, right? So that's wonderful to hear that somebody is already welcome here with a service dog.
We had a talk with, you know, our guild, our welcoming committee, to say that, you know, when you see the dog, don't be alarmed. It's working. You know, it's okay. So we've done that pre-teaching on our parish council level, and to those that stand at the candle stand and help out too. So
That's so important, right?
Yeah.
To have that communication ahead of time.
We had that, was it last week or the previous week, where we had a family come from Memorial. They're a new family, and one of their children obviously had a need in which they were in a larger wheelchair. So they actually had to pretty much put it in the main aisle. You know, that's one of our deficiencies of our church, is that our aisles are not fully compatible with ADA accessibility, especially in the back. So when someone brings someone up, the difficulty I've noticed with some families is that they're forced to bring the family members, especially in any wheelchair, up front. Well, I've kind of got to understand many of our families where, with all due respect to them, the last thing they want is more attention, understanding with whatever feelings that they're just there to pray and be with everyone else. And I've said that to the parish council, and our parish council and our committee has been really to the forefront about that stuff, where then, especially that last Sunday, I even took the opportunity to alter, because when we were doing the great entrance, I told the kids and everyone else, said, there's going to be someone there, please just do your thing, just stand right next to them, as if they're just a part of the church. And I was very proud of the kids, the leaders and the altars, as well as the committee members, that in other instances, they would have made it a point, and they would have gone up to the family and probably said, probably in the past, can you please move them, which would have been very disrespectful. But in this manner, we're understanding and we're being respectful to the situation. And, you know, it's a pretty humbling experience to see the growth of our community and its people to be all-inclusive and welcoming, where we know in situations that might have been in a different outcome, but we really, and then the humbling part was at the end when I gave the bread to the family, the one father of the child said, you know, he's like, Father, so you know, your community is really amazing. And it was very humbling because I understood, I think I read through the lines what he meant by that. Because in other situations, and he was, the child made noise, but then I even told some of the people, they were asking me, especially during the Our Father, as if he recognized, as everyone else was saying the Our Father all together, that he was making more noise at the time to be a part of it. It was very moving for myself to experience and witness, and I think other community members did as well too, seeing that and that interactiveness and participation. So yeah, we're really blessed, and this is why we think it's a great opportunity for us to grow and to learn more from you and what else we can do to enhance and serve.
You should be doing that. You guys should be on the road with me, going to other parishes, like best practice sharing. One of the things at Fully Human, that's the name of the ministry at the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese Center for Family Care that I lead. It's the Fully Human ministry. And we try to share ministry models so that people can, if someone's doing something really well, other churches can copy and take it. So the communication that you're doing right now, I mean, what you're doing with communication, setting the stage as leaders, the spiritual father and mother of the church, to lead the tone of acceptance is huge. It's huge. Yeah.
So I'm just going to talk on behalf of like our family. When we, like, maybe a year or two ago, we couldn't find a parish where we felt welcomed and like comfortable coming to church. Like, it wasn't that like, you know, you go to church, you know, we grew up with our old school parents, go to church every Sunday, go to church. So we tried everywhere. Like, my mom's buried at the monastery, I'd go there. But the setting is beautiful, but it's dark. It's hard for like a little guy like Nick to go into. So we would constantly try to keep going to church, but it kind of gave us a little bit of a bad taste when we go to different parishes and it was like, I don't have my son who's making noises, have to walk out of the church early because it's just too much, or I couldn't do Holy Communion because he wouldn't open his mouth or something. So I feel like we moved like a year ago or so, and we started coming here, and I remember reaching out to Father Presbyterian saying, you know, we have this taste, I really want to start going to church, I hope this open doors for us to come, and I feel like in the past year, we really have felt such a difference, like this, like we were saying to Anna, like this is like, we feel like welcome, this is our home, like we can come every Sunday, like my son now does basketball, I take church, he goes to church every Sunday, and it like opens, like it was like, when they started saying his name at Holy Communion, and he was opening his eyes, I wanted to cry, you know, because I'm like, you don't feel all that, like, oh, they're letting him through the aisles, like they know him, they recognize him, he's like a part of something. It makes such a difference in our lives. Like, we love Sundays now. We're like, we're gonna go, and like Nick used to be more in the back of the seats, but now he's more interested in watching Father Chris sing, and like wants to come closer to the front and just be a part of it. And it, like, when it's like open doors, it makes such a difference in your lives as opposed to like being anxious and not wanting to go to church. Like, I just want to say how St. Octavio's really makes us feel welcome here.
It's wonderful. Belonging is so important. I mean, we're talking about human needs. That's a basic human need, is to feel that we belong, right? It's a basic human need. So the fact that your parish is creating that space of belonging for everyone, that's a healthy parish. That's a healthy, loving family, right? That's beautiful. I don't even know if I need to give you more examples, right? So another example, there's a little guy who looks typically developing, is having a meltdown in the pews, and is verbal, and you know, you've heard him talk before, but he's melting down. And you know, what would be a way to communicate acceptance in that environment, in that situation? What's a way not to?
We've kind of instilled a how can we help attitude instead of you need to leave attitude. So we've gone up to people and say, how can we help you? And like, how can we support you, instead of, oh, there's the cry room, or, you know, please leave. And I feel like that has eased some anxiety in families. We're fortunate that through the Metropolis, our ministry that we have, we're awarded a grant, and so part of it is going to be making visuals and social stories and things like that. So hopefully within the next few months we'll have those supports in place for all families as well too. So we're trying.
Yeah, you're doing some wonderful things. It's beautiful. Exactly. So I like that. Instead of saying go to a different space, how can we help you, is such a different thing to hear than to a mother who's struggling or a father who's struggling to try to calm their child.
I was going to say, I think also tomorrow you explaining some of this to the rest of the parish will also help with that.
Okay.
Because I think people mean well, and I think people genuinely think that they're inclusive, and they know when they don't. And kind of going back to what you mentioned earlier, I think it's a generation thing. Most of the comments that have been said come from older generations where things were much different. And it's like, you know, things have changed a long way from then. So we have to kind of reteach people how to communicate and understand that people are going to make noise. People are going to sit in a wheelchair in the main aisle. People are going to, you know, sometimes be a little disruptive, and it's, you don't need to sit there and stare, or you don't need to,
Or shush people. That happens a lot, you know. You feel scolded, that kind of thing. If I could shush my child, I would, but he doesn't listen to shushes. So it just doesn't work, right? It doesn't, it makes it worse.
but also it's like, we're so used to people staring that we don't want people to stare, but sometimes observing somebody isn't a bad thing.
Right.
And understanding that, like, they're trying to figure out what the situation is and what's going on, and it's okay to watch, but, you know,
Right.
Look, we're see, observe, and we also have to kind of break that we're not being stared at, that they're not just staring at us to shush us or quiet us or, you know.
Sometimes it's a blessing for people to see a parent interact lovingly and calmly with their child in moments of disruption. I mean, what a blessing. I'll just tell you a story. I mean, when I was 3 years old, and this was one of the biggest lessons I ever, one of the first lessons I probably felt being in church, that God was present. My dad would take me to church. My little brother was just born, so I think it was a holiday. I think it was Christmas time. We were up in the balcony. And my dad was a very hands-on dad, played, we're on the back, I'm always jumping on him, that kind of thing. So he never said no to me. I would always be able to play with him. But he was kneeling, and I was trying to get his attention, and I'm jumping on his back, and I'm holding on his, pulling his arm down, and he was so still. He did not budge. He's like this. And I'm like, I stepped back, because that was different for me. Like, Dad's not paying attention to me. He's not, there's something bigger than me going on right now. Like, this is something big. And I knew there was something sacred happening. And so the way he responded taught me that this is a special time. I'm not to jump on him. He didn't have to tell me, don't jump on me. I just knew it because of the way he was so stoic and was so prayerful during the consecration of the gifts.
On that example, I think two instances that always come to mind regarding our conversation is that one, whenever I have someone, and it is, Val made a great point, it's very generational. I have people who I talk to from about 30, 40 years ago, so these are elders now, and they have like a type of PTSD. The PTSD was that everything was so regimented and orderly, like they would tell me horror. I think they over-exaggerate. People would tell me horror stories about priests who mid-gospel, if they heard noise, would look up and stare at the people until it was completely dead silent. And I feel bad because, that's what's been ingrained in their mind. So then therefore, they then lash out how they were trained to then someone, and it doesn't even have to be anyone with anyone with special needs. My children, presbytera, the funniest story is I'm at the altar, and my boys, it might have been my first two because the little one was born, and someone went up to presbytera and said, what did they say? If your husband was here?
If their father was in church, maybe they would behave better.
Oh.
They didn't know that she was up to presbytera. So, and then she's like, well, he's up there.
No, I didn't say
Did you
anything.
say that?
No.
But think about that example. How our wording, how our participation, because when we're all trying to handle as best we can to whatever situation we're in. And again, and I think the hardest part, which I agree with Val, we've talked about this as well too, is that's what our hope is, especially for tomorrow. I know today it's going to be a really interactive and wonderful event, but tomorrow at the conclusion of the service when you speak to the community, you're not only going to have, obviously, a full church and people's attention on you, but that generational, the most of the time that they recognize is when it's first-hand experience. Whether they've dealt with it, either they have a child themselves or anyone else in that manner, then they recognize. If not, you have these other ones. Still, they'll tell you to this day, and they'll be like, I'll sit up front. I go into what you said, and I say it to any of the families whenever I have a complaint. Because I've had some that say, not about our children with special needs or our families, more so just in general. Oh, there's so many children. They're too loud. And I said, first, if there's no it's quite comical. I tell them, if there's no children, the church is dead. And then I said, secondly, if they're disrupting you that much, goes back to what your dad was doing, clearly you're not focusing on prayer and worship.
Yes.
That's my biggest struggle, and I think many of us recognize that because then they're looking around, they're distracted, they're paying attention to other things instead of trying to understand and focus on the worship. So we wholeheartedly recognize where that example comes from.
And I want to just say, this isn't, I'm not judging, because I have done this. When I was a young adult, and I was at seminary, and the seminarians brought their kids, and they were making noise, I was like, so tempted by it. I'm like, why don't they keep them quiet? Why are they because I had no clue what it was like to have children in church, right? I wasn't a parent yet. So, yeah.
I know when we're in church, You know, we try to follow the rules, tell the kids what's around. And she doesn't. She's 2.5, she doesn't. But what's nice is whoever's sitting behind doesn't ignore. They'll just, you know, and she touches everybody. So, they're very nice and welcoming that, like they're not like, oh my God, she's touching me, or, you know, and they all know the families now. So when they're in the gym and she's running around in the gym, they know what their page. It's almost like home, you know?
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna pick her up and take care of her, or
Exactly.
which is nice. So it's comforting in church when she'll turn around and, like I said, you know, look at somebody's watch because she's used to touching mom's watch, and they let her, and that's very
Beautiful.
nice.
People interact in a kind way, they'll put their hand on hers, or they'll wave at her, they'll blow a kiss, and she'll blow a kiss back. You know,
Yeah.
people, it's nice when people can interact in a way that she's interacting, you know?
So beautiful examples. I mean, compared to what you experienced, think of, you know, all of us here who might be acquainted with a disability. Think of how you would feel if you're struggling and someone says that to you. So a lot of people who are in church with their children go through this. They are kind of those kind of comments. And if you don't have that faith foundation where you know God wants you to be there, where you feel loved by God and you want to keep coming back, if you're still kind of like, I don't even know if God loves me kind of deal, right? Then you're not going to want to come back. I mean, that's not a welcoming environment. That doesn't feel good.
And then also, what we try to do is also, like we were talking, we were praying, try to get her to turn around. This is what we're supposed to do. Not let her just walk around, or let her.
Yeah.
So again, trying
There's
to
a balance.
teach her to, right.
Yes.
Yeah, you look around and sit in your space, but yet now we're praying. And she fights it a little bit. First of all, she's still young, but
Right.
to know how to do it, and she does very well with it.
Because she's always in church, she's going to learn. She's going to learn. Yes. And there are times that noises happen, that's fine. And everybody has different challenges. So Sophia she may imitate her older siblings more than people with autism don't typically imitate. So it's harder for people with autism to learn socially acceptable behaviors, right? So we have to be understanding that every challenge is different, and according to what every person has, try to take them to the next step of, but the way I see it is my son loves church, and it's because he's been in church. He loves it. He feels the presence of God. There are times, yes, I had to take him home, or there are times that I didn't take him home and it was a nightmare. And I learned from that too, just like with any child. So we learn as we go. But I'm sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, for us, we're in church, and I'm making his noises or whatever, and it's just my wife and I, we can. But the thing is, Tommy has an older sister and a younger sister, and they're his, great protectors. And so, my wife and I may be able to, because we're adults and, we've been through some stuff, recognize,
They're thick skinned.
but they don't. And not only for church, but in any situation, if anybody is mean or disrespectful or anything to Tommy, I mean, God help them, because they are his protectors. But we're in church and that happens. So get them to buy into
being there. So
going to church.
the typically developing children are having a harder time.
I mean, they're adults now, but it's ingrained in them.
Siblings have a hard time. They have challenges that, they often suffer in silence. They often rebel, just not even consciously, just for attention, or, there's a lot of stuff that siblings go through because they're new human beings too, going through this together with a person they love. and how they process it is going to be very different, like you said, than an adult.
I think all the interactions in the church, and I know we have a different attitude, especially here at St. Ignatius. I mean, being that I have Presbytera, who helps run the Metropolis Special Needs Ministry, being that we have families that are close and also in leadership roles that have either families or members apart that either have special needs or anything that they might be, we have made it a point. Because I think we all recognize exactly what you're talking about, especially with your daughters as well too, because that's my biggest fear is whatever interaction they have in the church. I mean, the worst example that I bring up is like when someone comes into the church, that's their first interaction and recognition of how the church is imprinted on them. So if you have an old man at the Pangadi, the candle stand, he doesn't know you, he'll just stare at you and give you a dirty look. I mean, and it's just who they are. And then the hardest part is when you have the priest and the parish council just sound like when someone comes in, I don't care if it's from Timbuktu or whatever. Good morning, Kalimera, Kronia Pola, I don't care, Merry Christmas. And that's because that's just the first, because what you said, the worst feeling is then children, family members, future young adults and families receive an attitude that is a poor taste, and therefore do not want to come, do not want to participate, and therefore that's when we get a lot of attitudes we see modern day where people have an issue with the institution of the church. They're like, well, I don't need the church. I just believe in God, and that's what it is because of X, Y, and Z. That's a prime example. You make a good point because then it still leaves a bad taste in the mouth. Like, why would I want to go to church, right?
I think tying it to accommodation. So for those of you who might, I am a special education teacher. That's kind of how I came into this leadership role, and I think accommodations in that school setting of like, what can I do within these walls to help you and your families participate better, to feel comfortable? You know, what do we have to change? What do we have to change? What can we change? What tools can we bring in? And part of those tools is meeting with Father. And that's not just for you. I'm talking accommodations for families. You want your daughters to come talk with Father, set up an appointment. Let them come in and talk to him. If you are new to the community and want time to bring your child in and get acclimated to the church, so on a Sunday when it is kind of overwhelming, just don't let that be the first time. Make an appointment in the office, meet with Father. You want to practice taking communion? Call Father. Bring them at night or when there's nobody in church and let them see the church. And that is what hopefully more and more we want you guys to do that. We want anybody with disabilities, atypical, neurodivergent, whatever you want, come. I mean, there are typical developing children who don't like to take communion too, and we tell those families, come, wait after church. And waiting in line is a hard thing. If they can't wait for communion, please communicate that with Father, because if he doesn't know, then he goes and consumes the chalice. So if you would rather wait till the end of church to receive communion, please let him know if that waiting piece is too hard, so then he knows that he can commune after, or if you don't want to sit up front, or, if you're going to be late, or any of those things. Like, if you guys don't help us, we can't help you. So again, the accommodations, the communication, please let us know, and we can help with, any of that. So, yeah.
Well, you have a welcome, open door communication. Yeah.
This is completely amazing to me.
I know.
I mean, because, I feel so guilty because I believe in God so strongly, and I never once lost my faith with anything that happened with Tommy, with anything. I just thank God for getting us through everything. It wasn't, why us or why not us? You know what I mean? Like, it's going to sound weird, but I feel like God entrusted us with Tommy, and it's our job to do the best we can, advocate for him and protect him and our family. And I have a daughter 26 and a daughter who's 21, and we go to church for baptism only, Easter, Christmas, like, because of the terrible taste we had from St. John's. And like, when you said come talk to you, that means the world, because we went and talked to a priest when Tommy baptized. He was having seizures at the time, he was only 2 months old. They refused to not completely submerge him in the water. And our doctor said, absolutely not. And so we had to go to another church and figure it out. And I've always just had kind of like a chip on my shoulder about church, not about God. Nothing to do with God, because He's blessed us. But I just thought to myself, you know what, this is silly. Like, I think that our children who have special needs, adults, whatever, they belong in church probably more than anyone else, because they need it the most. You know, they need that spirituality.
And we
thank
need,
you.
You know, and to press, sorry, I had another family, completely different, who has a special needs daughter, and obviously when she was first born and everything was going on, she was, I believe, in the NICU, and I believe that they performed an air baptism. So air baptism is a baptism that's done in an extremis where we don't know if the person's going to survive. But it was done by a Catholic, an Orthodox family, and the most heartbreaking thing that the parents asked me is my child going to be saved? Because they weren't baptized traditionally. And it was because then as when she got older, she has like a tracheotomy, so she can't fully like swallow and receive in some capacities. And it was very heartbreaking to hear it, not only as a spiritual father, but as a parent, and actually as a human, because you think what the parents are thinking about, and to even contemplate that is devastating, but to know that it's not true, that I think if anything, you hit on the head, especially about our family members and those with special needs. I tell people they're angels among us. I said, if we can't be as innocent as they are, then we're the ones who have lost our way. And that's where I think when you see these situations, it's pretty remarkable, but like you said, sometimes it still exists, and I think it's just a continued growth in education. And I don't want to take the rest of that and go ahead, but apply to it.
This is amazing. The conversation is really important, and everything you said is spot on. So in my humble opinion, so yes, I think but the thing is, I could see why you would get a bad taste in your mouth from the church, but you also need the sacraments. You need them. You need Holy Communion. You need confession. You need a community around you of people, and maybe not all of them will be friendly or open, but some will. There will be friendly ones. So yeah, that's why I want to do more and more educating of parishes, so that no one ever has to feel. It's already hard enough. So if you feel shamed in any way or feel less than, made to feel less than in any way, you're exhausted as a child a lot of the time when you're raising your child. So you just like, why am I going to go to be shamed? You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we've been late and said it, but one other thing that from time to time kind of rears its ugly head is like the sins of the parents, or the sins of the father, and the punishment of this.
We were just, we had a party for my husband because he recently became a judge, and we had relatives come. And I was so taken aback. Like, I thought my heart was going to stop. One of the old relatives grabbed my arm, took me aside, and, like, just kind of pulled me and said, oh, I'm so, like, everything that happened with your family, it's because of your mother, or your mother-in-law. I'm like, first of all, I said, I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's my mother-in-law. And secondly, what happened? God gave me this gift, and you're telling me, shut up. I didn't say it, but I just walked away.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, who would ruin a very special day with such an awful thing to say?
Has anyone met older Greek families with many people that have special needs older? We're talking about, they gotta be like in their 80s, and then they would have children that are in their 50s or 60s with special needs. A common conception, what they would do is when they would have special needs children,
In Greece.
no, even here, I've seen it, because I remember when I grew up in St. Dimitri, when I was in St. Dimitri, Chicago, being by the neighborhood and stuff like that, the older one, they were special needs adults. You would never know. Why? Because there's a sense of what? Shame and embarrassment, so they wouldn't bring them out. They would just keep them closed in. I mean, like legit, just be in the house, take care, maintain. That's the heartbreak. And goes back to what they're saying. So then they apply asinine thoughts, curse, sins, that this befell on you because to think of the audacity or how outrageous it is mind-blowing. But then I tell people, and I would only challenge you, I feel the pain because it's obviously your family, is actually out of sadness have sympathy for them. Because that's how low they think. Because they don't know. I go to the absolute, but I get it, I can say that, but when you hear that, you're almost like, wow, seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I was angry. I didn't show it because I wanted to have grace for them, and it was it took me so off guard. But at the same time, I do feel sorry for them. But what's going on in your head? Like,
people,
it's surreal.
When we do not understand things, we can make up crazy reasons for why they happen.
But yet those same people go to church every Sunday and judge people that don't.
It's a generational thing. When we first got Sylvia's diagnosis, she had a birth diagnosis. And I remember reaching out to different families of different relationships that had different, I met with one gentleman whose sister's 50 with Down syndrome. And his mom was a big advocate in schools in our area. And I remember him telling me, like, his mom was able to put her in an institution and forget she ever had her. It's a generational thing where medically we've come so far, but the mentality for our older generations, and that's kind of what I go based off of at this point, is things were so different then, and the resources that were available and the help that they had back then was non-existent. And so a lot of times they are ignorant to what they can say or do or feel because they want to be helpful and they think they're being helpful by making comments like that, and they're not. And it's hard balancing and trying to accept that someone was taught that, because that's what it is. They were taught that at that point. And I have a best friend who's got cerebral palsy. She's in a wheelchair. And I can't tell you how many times she is put on the head and is told, I will pray for your healing. And she's like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like,
It's who I am.
This is who I am, and it's trying to adapt, and it's also trying to teach these generations and people that there is nothing wrong, and they might need a little bit more of accommodations, or they might need a little bit more assistance, or they might need a little bit more time, or it's just as much teaching for them as it is teaching for us to understand that they need a little bit more time for themselves to understand all of this. And that's the hardest part of it, is because we all have to deal with the adaptations, and we're used to this. They're not. And we have to then be patient and accommodating to them to understand it too, and teach them how to interact and how to handle this, and say, there's nothing wrong with her. She's going to need a little bit more time, but that's it. Like, you might need to have a little bit more adaptations or a little bit more time, or patience, but he's making more noise. Focus where you're supposed to be focusing, It's hard. And it's a generational thing that I come across. And going back to the gentleman I had talked to with his sister being 50, his mom said, absolutely not, I'm not going to institutionalize her. And she went on to make the schools inclusive in this area. So it's about how we handle our situations just as much as we teach them how to handle situations.
I would like to just add to that. Sometimes, depending on the personality, I had a lot of guilt thinking it was something I did wrong, that Michael was so sick. What did I do in my pregnancy? I had dental work because I didn't know I was pregnant. You feel a lot of guilt. As a parent, you take that on. So if you already feel that, for somebody to say that, it can crush you. But over and over again, the gospel message that was given to me in times that I was feeling guilt, when I would bring it to my confessor, when I would pour out my heart and soul, and not even just, practical things. If it was my sins before, I'm not a perfect person. Maybe I did something that, these are the thoughts the evil one puts in our heads, right? So every time with different people I've talked to, the gospel message that keeps being fed to me is the healing of the man born blind. So, and I don't think it's by accident, but the Holy Spirit has put it in every priest I've ever shared a conversation with about this situation. the man born blind, the disciples said, they were walking by with Jesus, and the disciples said, Jesus, Lord, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he had this disability? And he said, neither him nor his parents sinned, but that the glory of God could work through him. Okay? And that is my new modus operandi.
Yep.
So that the glory of God can work through my child. And there's nothing wrong with praying for greater health, for medical intervention, for healing. That's not wrong. But the healing is the community healing. The healing is when the community realizes that everyone has value and everyone's precious to God. Okay? That's the healing that happens. And in the gospel stories, Jesus healed people who had physical disabilities and mental and any range of sicknesses and illnesses, which we all experience, by the way. Some takes longer than others. Some happens earlier in life than others. St. John Chrysostom said the healing was not about that person, about the cure. The healing was that that person was now included into the community, embraced more. They had more of a life, more of a full life. But we have more technology now than they did. We have more tools to make that possible. The healing can come because we have so much to make it possible for all of us to participate in worshiping God. Okay. As one. I'm sorry, you've been wanting to say something.
No, I was just going to say, years ago, I had 3 boys, and people would say to me, oh, you only have boys, don't you wish you had a girl? No, I'm very blessed that I have 3, and at that time we were healthy children, and they are all healthy. And then Sophia came into our life, and I used to think, okay, I'm blessed, I have these grandchildren, and then when she came into my life, I thought, I'm still blessed. She was handed to my family for whatever reason, to make us closer, to help us learn, so I used to think that, not one me, but more like, okay, why did this, but it's just so blessing. I'm so thankful she is healthy, and like Dad said, she'll be just a little slower in her needs, but it's still a blessing, when people tell me, it's, again, go back to generational and old, don't you wish, what? Somebody told me a long time ago, you know what you want, but you love what you get. And I thought, it's so perfect, because you're right.
And God knows the potential we have to love, and He's growing our potential to love. Okay? That's the gift Michael has given us, and they're countless, but nobody's taught me more about what it means to be human than my son. No one, except for Jesus Christ, of course. But no one, and I'm saying that that's not just a line, a tagline or something. It is the truth. God grows us through humility, not through accolades, not through achievements. He grows us through humility, through hardship, through difficult challenges. And it is not your fault. It is no one's fault. It is a gift. But it's not wrong to struggle with these things, okay? Doesn't mean you don't have faith if you say, God, why? That's okay. Just talk to Him. He wants you to come to Him, okay? It's not wrong to say, Lord, why is this happening? I don't want this person to hurt. Why does my sister or brother have to struggle? Why do people make fun of them? That hurts me so much. It's okay to go to God with those things. He wants us to talk to Him, right? Nothing's off limits with God, and it doesn't mean you don't have faith. That grows your faith to talk to Him about the hardest parts, okay? So I give you permission to talk about anything, not I, but God gives you permission to talk. He can handle anger, our anger at Him. He can handle our questions. He can handle all of it, right? All right, I don't know, maybe it's time for a little stretch, break? I don't know. Yeah.
Sure, we can take a little break and then we'll start in about 5 minutes. Who wants to get coffee, tea, or water? We'll continue. Lunch will be in about an hour.
Oh, yeah, so when I go to the talks, like that's what I say. And I never say which parish it was at. But I go, I was sitting and I had two boys, 4 and 2, you know. Someone turned around and goes, maybe if their mother was understanding, they would be better. And I